Welcome to the Mindful Fire Podcast, a show about crafting a life you love and making work optional, using the tools of mindfulness, envisioning, and financial independence. I'm your host, Adam Cuello, and I'm so glad you're here. Each episode of the Mindful Fire Podcast explores these three tools through teachings, guided meditations, and inspiring interviews with people actually living them to craft a life they love. At its core, Mindful Fire is about creating more awareness and choice in your life. Mindfulness helps you develop self-awareness to know yourself better and what's most important to you by practicing a kind, curious awareness. Envisioning is all about choosing to think big about your life and putting the power of your predicting brain to work to create the life you dream of. And financial independence brings awareness and choice to your financial life, empowering you to make your vision a reality by getting your money sorted out and ultimately making work optional. And here's the best part. You don't have to wait until you reach financial independence to live out your vision. Mindful Fire is about using these tools to craft that life now on the path to financial independence and beyond. If you're ready to start your Mindful Fire journey, go to mindfulfire.org/start and download my free envisioning guide. In just 10 minutes, this guide will help you craft a clear and inspiring vision for your life. Again, you can download it for free at mindfulfire.org/start. Let's jump into today's episode. Liz, welcome to the Mindful Fire Podcast. I'm so glad to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me, Adam. I'm excited to be here.
So Liz, I'd love to have you start by sharing a little bit about who you are, your journey, and what you're up to in the world.
My journey started a long time ago. That's the thing, that I am a 55-year-old woman that has retired from corporate through attaining fire. But here's the thing. I started at 30 because my husband and I both had sales jobs. I was working for AT&T at the time, and we had experienced lifestyle creep. I felt like I was on a treadmill. I had two small children. One was in private school. The other one's in day care. And it just felt exhausting to me. I felt like this is crazy and insane. I can't do this anymore. And one of my coworkers shared with me a book. And I was like, all right, I'll read it. Women didn't talk about money very much in the workplace at that time. So this was a big thing that there were three of us that decided to read this book together. And it was called Financial Peace by Dave Ramsey. And I read the book and I went, oh my goodness, do you mean that we could actually live debt-free? And so I had my husband read it. And then he was like, yeah, let's do it. So we created a plan. And the plan was super simple. The plan was we wanted to live completely debt-free, wanted to college educate our kids, and we wanted to create enough passive income within 20 years to make work optional. Now, the FIRE movement wasn't even going back then. It was just called SMART. It wasn't called FIRE back then. So that's when we started our plan, and we made some big changes. We actually had built a 4,600 square foot home with a 360-degree view. And we ended up selling that house, and we moved. We packed up and moved, and we bought, instead of that big house on 10 acres, we ended up with a house half its size on a cul-de-sac with 10 neighbors. So that's how it all started. And then we just built from there. Fortunately, once you put your mind somewhere, it happened much sooner than we had planned. So
very cool. So you built this house. That's a dream of mine. But I also am like, I live in this house. This room that you're looking at is essentially what I envisioned with regards to like the great room of this house. I know you sold the house, but like, how did that come about? And when did you decide that like, this is eating up so much of our money and this is what we thought we wanted, but maybe it's not what we actually want now?
Yeah. And we've since built 2 more houses. So I want you to know, I'm not against building houses at all. I know what happened for us is that it just became too big, too much, because you have to elevate your landscaping. and you have to elevate. It's like then you're buying furniture for all those. It just felt like I was on this treadmill that was set on 4.5, and I just couldn't keep up anymore.
Mm.
But as far as the house and the visioning, that's always been easy for us. And I know that's not easy for everyone to really mentally walk through rooms before they exist. Is that, and we
Yes,
both,
that's very easy for me. But I know you're
yeah,
right. It's not easy for everyone, which I've come to find
no,
out.
yeah, no, I'm very spatially aware. And in fact, the home we live in now is a handcrafted log home, and it's on the water and it's beautiful. But when you build a log home, you have to design all of your electrical ahead of time. So they drill all of those logs. So I literally had to think, like, close my eyes and think, where do I want every outlet and light switch in this house? Because there's no change in it.
Yeah, once those logs are in place, you're done.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So
Yeah.
we're back to a big house again. But when we made the decision to get our finances in order so that we could make work optional, that's when we went to the smaller house. And it was great because we ended up buying a home that was 4 doors away from the public elementary school. And so there were weeks, it just made our life so much more rich because there were weeks our kids never even got in a car. We could literally walk everywhere. The library was on the same campus as the school. It was just great. So it was a very good decision for us. And of course, you justify whatever you decide, but that's
a good point.
But yeah, but it was a very good decision for us as a family and financially. And then as far as what we're doing now, my husband retired a few years before I did because he was just feeling ready to step out, and we both could. I chose to stay a little longer, and I just wanted to see what I could do. Being a completely financially independent woman showing up to work was a game changer. I almost doubled my income that year. It was
Please
like,
tell me more. Please tell me more
yeah.
about that.
Yeah. You know what? When you show up knowing that you're actually investing every dollar of what you make, it is a game changer because it becomes so much more fun. There's no pressure. Now, I was in for sales, so there's obviously pressure. You have quotas or whatever, but I had been seasoned enough I didn't have to worry too much about making my numbers. And I had always been a top performer. But showing up, knowing that you can walk into a room and it did not matter whether you got that sale or not, was amazing. And guess what? You show up so much more radiant and you get a lot more sales.
Yeah, I imagine you're able to connect more and just be more present, and because you don't have that fear, right? Like you don't have
Yeah.
that feeling of this has to work. Like
Yeah.
it's a totally different energy. I love that.
And I think that's the part that I probably coach the most on now is energy. Like, how are you showing up? Because you can take the same action of creating a spending plan or a budget. You can do that from lack or you can do it from abundance. Totally different results, but it's the
Mhm.
same action. That's the
Mhm.
energy behind what you're doing. Now, being financially independent was a circumstance. I chose to think about it so that this doesn't impact what my day is going to be like tomorrow, whether I get this sale or not.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So essentially, you reached financial independence. You hit that number, whatever that number is that you had in your mind and in your plan. And then you just said, I'm enjoying myself. So I'm going to keep doing this for a little bit. And that's when you changed how you showed up. Or maybe you didn't change how you showed up too much, but like you had this different situation and you were able to double your income in the year.
Yes. And it played out for a couple years, but it was amazing. And it's just how you show up. Do you know what I mean? It was just, I just felt more confident. Now, again, you can feel more confident without having hit financial independence. I want to make sure that's a thought, you thought work, but I wasn't doing that deep of work at that time. And I just know that was part of the change, the shift for me is that once did make work optional, it just became more fun.
Yeah.
And the other thing that what I'm working on now and is the give back, right? That's the part that I love about building a coaching practice now is that my husband and I built our financial independence through real estate. The real estate pays all of our bills and it hits our dreams. But the coaching business allows me to be very generous, and it allows me to give back and also invest in growing myself and the business too. So that's been something that's really lit me up, is that being able to show up very generous.
Tell me more about that. What do you mean by it allows you to show up more generous?
One of the things that I always dreamed about, I think I mentioned that I've always been a good visioner. Like I can envision things out further out. I saw myself as an 86-year-old woman at like a luncheon, a ladies' luncheon. So just envision this, maybe at like a country club, and I was wearing a beautiful outfit. And I was able to write a check for a scholarship fund. And I just thought, someday I'm going to be that kind of woman who can do that. And last year, I got to start a scholarship fund. I did it a lot earlier than 86.
Yeah, that's right. That's what we were talking about before we started recording. Yeah.
This is the legacy wealth, right? This is knowing that my children are going to be fine because I've raised them to be independent and self-sufficient.
So this is a college scholarship fund that you've created, and you saw this happening at 86, but at 55, 54, you've already made it happen. That's the thing I love about envisioning, right? I talk all the time about envisioning. I love envisioning. I've had such amazing experiences in my life by being clear on what I want to create. And then it's just amazing how it happens so much more quickly than you can even imagine it once you have it clear in your mind. And it sounds like that was what happened with you on your financial independence journey with this scholarship fund. I'm sure in hundreds of other examples as well, as it has for me.
Yeah, it really does. And it's like you just operate at a higher frequency, right? You operate at a higher vibrational energy. And that might sound a little woo to some people, but I have completely embodied it now. I totally believe that when you can see it happening ahead of time in your mind's eye, then it comes to you so much faster. And that's one of the things, like what you just said, though, is being really clear about what you want. That's probably one of the things that I coach on so much, is like, what do you want? And getting it in alignment with the values and desires. So not what society tells you should want. Like for me, where it was like, oh, you got to have this big house. I didn't really want that anymore. Did that make sense? And I got to choose again. I got to say, I don't want it. And now I'm going to choose something else.
It's staying in touch with yourself, right? Knowing yourself, developing self-awareness, allowing that to grow as you grow, and continuing to stay in touch with what's real for you right now and what do you actually want. And then being willing to make the choice, right? I always say, and that people will have heard this at the beginning of the episode in the intro, that mindful fire is all about awareness and choice. And that's, for me, that's how these two things, mindfulness and financial independence, really intersect.
Yeah, I think that I say it just a tad different. I say it awareness, clarity, and vision. Those are the ones that how I say it. The other part, so we're completely aligned. We just say it a little bit different because it is a choice, right? Everything is a choice. So I like how you add the choice element there. And really, though, is spending the time to allow yourself the space and grace for the awareness. So many people just live on the autopilot or doing what they think society thinks they should do. And so they live in that shoulding all the time. I always tell my clients, stop shoulding on yourself and don't let anyone else shoulding on you, because it's
I love that. I love that phrase, because so many people, myself included, are shoulding all over themselves constantly. I should be doing this. I'm supposed to be doing that. I should this and that. And it's just exhausting. And it drains all your energy, all your creativity, all your passion, because you think that your life should be something other than it is. And this moment should be something other than it is. And that is just a recipe for misery.
And you have plenty of meditations that you offer about being in the present. One of the things that I think is really important on this FIRE journey, or the financial wellness journey, is to be present. And sometimes that means cleaning up the past. And in a financial aspect, that could be eliminating debt. I think that once my husband and I became completely debt-free, I'm talking mortgages, I'm talking about every rental home, I'm talking about the whole thing. We lived completely debt-free.
No
Once
mortgages
we,
on any of that real estate.
no, no.
Wow, that's
None.
impressive.
And that is a choice, though. I want you to know there are a
Sure.
lot of people out there that are real estate investors that think we are absolutely insane because we are not using leverage. And I get the math. Don't get me wrong. I understand math. But this is a choice of how we want to show up. We get to show up a completely different investor that has no debt versus an investor that has, especially going into this whatever economy we're going to have. But my point about cleaning up the past is that eliminating the debt allows you to be so present, because when we're paying for debt, we're paying for a decision we made sometimes years ago. So we have to live in the past while we're cleaning that up. Is that
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so I love having that ability to be really present and then making decisions for your future self. That's that envisioning work that I love doing. And you do too. But making that decision for your future self from the present so that in the future you can be present. So
Yep. It's very nuanced. Yeah. Let's talk about your mindful money method.
the mindful money method is all about awareness, clarity, and vision so that you create a plan, right? It is a planning method that allows you to create a spending plan, a safety net, sinking funds that you will love and follow. That's the thing, is that you will commit and follow. So many women that I coach, and mainly coach women, the corporate women that have an entrepreneurial spirit, that's typically they are the primary breadwinner in their relationship, either solo or primary breadwinner. So often that they're just like, I've tried budgeting before. This is what I hear, and it didn't work for me. And it's like, of course it didn't work for you, because we didn't align your values and desires to what you truly want so that you could love your plan and commit to it. I think that was one of the things that happened for me, is that I really loved the idea. I loved the plan that we created, or the goals, the big goals. And I want to be super clear that we did have setbacks. We did have, I will say, poor financial decisions along the way, but we still kept going in the same direction. Does that make sense? We had set the GPS for the route we were going, where we were in destination. We sometimes veered off the route. Let's just say that, but we always got ourselves back.
Got it. So walk me through the method.
The method really starts with awareness. So we first identify what are the values and desires. And then we get really clear with our numbers and our thoughts about money. So we identify, what are we truly thinking about money? Because I find so many people on a FIRE journey are actually repelling money because they're coming to it from lack. They're coming to it from, like, the energy behind it is that it's like a scarcity, like I need this for survival mode, right? Rather than abundance and generosity. And so if we can identify what's the energy driving your actions, we can make the shift so that it happens more easily. I was one of those people that had, I would say, a scarcity mindset during the beginnings of my journey, for sure. And I inherited some of that from my mother. And I love my mother. My mother's been passed for many years, but she's an incredible woman. However, she probably got some of that scarcity from her mother. And then, so now it's like unwinding that I know that I modeled some of that for my children. So I try now to unwind some of that modeling that I had received, that I gave them. But that's really some of the energy behind what you are building your spending plan from. And then how can you commit and follow it? How do you love it? How do you come from love? What would love be doing? And then we also, one of the things that is really important is identifying, on the clarity vision part, is identifying what is your financial independent number? What is enough for you? Like, we have to know a number that we're measuring against. And what does that look like for you? For me, as I mentioned earlier, it was that we lived completely debt-free. We college educated our children, and that we had enough passive income to make work optional. And as I said earlier, I wanted fancy FIRE. I didn't want frugal FIRE, or some people call it lean FIRE versus fat FIRE. I call it frugal or fancy.
I like fancy FIRE. That's good. I love that. Man, there's so much there in what you just said. I would love to dive into two of the things you were just talking about in the first part of your method. One is overcoming the scarcity mindset, and the other is the question of what is enough. I post on LinkedIn most weekdays, and the other day I wrote a post about what is enough. And actually, I put out a meditation, basically a practice of letting this breath be enough. Because I think that the question of what is enough it's elusive, one. And two, it's also one of the major questions that led me to start this podcast because of the scarcity mindset. So let's start there. I very much have a scarcity mindset. I try to overcome it. It causes me to be frugal and cheap. I've gone over the line many times, and I don't want to be like that. I want to be generous. And so I'd love to first maybe hear your thoughts on how people in the FIRE movement are repelling money and what scarcity mindset has to do with that, and then how we overcome it.
Well, the one way that I like to about the scarcity mindset or the repelling, right? Let's go with that. The repelling. I asked my clients to complete some sentences so that we can uncover what are they thinking about money. And one of the sentences that I have them complete is rich people are. And we can tell a little bit about which way you're leaning towards scarcity or abundance by how the response there is. And the way we can first check in to see where that is, because a lot of people aren't ready to name their emotions around money, right? Because money is emotional, but to say you're scarce or you're feeling scarce or scared, because that's really what it is. It's fear, correct? So if a lot of people won't say that they're feeling fear or scarce around money, but we can start by saying, do you feel positive or negative in your body? Like tune into your body. How does that feeling? Is it positive or negative? And then we can also tune into where do you feel it? How does it feel? And then we can start naming some emotions. That's when we can just get leaning into what are those emotions. And if they're negative coming out of it, it tends to be on the scarcity scale. Does that answer your question there?
Yeah. It makes sense.
Then do you want to feel that way? This is what your choice.
This is where the choice comes in.
Yeah. Do you want to feel that way? Do you want to feel negative about money or repelling it? Because if you're thinking that rich people are bad or greedy or whatever, that is negative emotions that you are not going to be bringing that, you're going to repel it. You don't want to be like that.
Absolutely. You're basically telling the universe, like, don't bring me any money. I don't want to be rich.
Exactly. Yeah. And I see it over and over again. I hear things like, it's really hard for me to spend money on myself. A lot of people tell me that. And I'm like, why? And then we start digging into.
Tell me more. I feel that.
Are you one of those people?
I am one of those. I will just say, like, I'm thinking about investing in a program to hone my message, go and guest on other people's podcasts and like bring more business to me. But I've really come to realize that like I am unwilling to invest in myself and in my projects. So like the podcast, all this stuff, I try to do it as cheaply as possible. And yeah, so like, yes, that's me.
That's interesting because I've been there also, by the way, just so you know. And I'm just maybe a few steps ahead on this progression, because my tagline now is you'll never regret investing in yourself. That is absolutely, like, I made a little Bitcoin investment, right? Because I wanted to know. I'd lead a group of women. So I wanted to like be the one to experiment instead of them and let them know. And I'm like, okay, I don't really have regret because I went into it knowing it was an experiment, but that money is gone. I mean, it's like that is gone. And that's okay because it was an experiment. And it was a funny thing, I'll tell you. I sold a sewing machine and a designer handbag, and that's the money I used and it was an expensive sewing machine, but I used to experiment in my cryptocurrency. I don't really have regrets about it, but if I had to do it over again, I wouldn't do it again. Does that make
right? Well, because you don't have the sewing machine anymore.
Yeah. Now it's like, okay, which is all fine. But my point is, if I would have invested that, it was $2,500. If I would have invested that $2,500 in me, I would still have it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It wouldn't be gone.
It wouldn't be gone. And so I'm like, you never regret investing in yourself. Now, one of the things that I really try to help through the method is we uncover the money story. That's one of the other parts that we do. And then we envision how do we want to rewrite it so that it's a much happier ending. And when we do that, we can start spending money without guilt or with remorse. So I hope you invest in yourself. If it feels right to you, if it feels in alignment with your values and desires, then I say go for it.
Yeah. One thing that I realize when I think about this stuff and just like how ridiculous, it kind of points to how ridiculous it is that I won't invest in myself. My stock market investments will drop $100,000 and I will be like, okay. But when I'm thinking to spending any amount of money on myself, it's like, oh, I can't do that. And I agonize over it. And then most of the time I don't do it. And similarly, like if I go out to dinner and spend $100, I don't think about it. But when it's like, oh, do I hire so and so to edit the podcast, or do I invest in this thing that's $100? It's like, oh, it's like, what am I doing?
Hey, you're not alone. We all do
No.
this. You have a human brain. This is the thing. And the human brain was designed for scarcity, right? It's designed for safety and to keep us. But what we're doing now is trying to override it. That's what the method does. That's what the mindful money method is all about, really looking at it and putting it in front of you. Would I choose this again? Is this what I want? And if it is, then go for it. And build your life around those values and desires that you want to bring more into your life.
So practically, what steps or practices would you advise someone to say, hey, here's how I got myself out of scarcity mindset and more into an abundance mindset?
The word allow is one of the parts, the ones that I really love, because a spending plan, I love my spending plan. See, I think about it differently than a lot of people. One, I don't use the B word. I don't use the budget word, but I do use it. I call it a spending plan. And I make a very conscious decision with my husband, and we decide how much we are going to put in the categories, the buckets. And then I'm free to spend whatever I want and allow myself within those buckets. So I love the spending plan. I love that. So that's one of the things for sure, is have a spending plan. The other thing is to have a safety net, because it allows you to take some risk. And I don't call it an emergency fund, because I don't want to call out emergencies to the universe. And like, that's not what I'm doing. I'm calling it a safety net. I'm allowing myself to go a little further out on that tightrope, because I know I will be caught if I fall. So
I like the language that you use.
Do you know what's so interesting for me is I feel like as a coach, like this is the part that my daughter is wonderful with words. But she said, Mom, you are so much more conscious of your words now than you used to be. And that's what as a coach and stepping into this new life beyond my corporate life and I call it my encore career, by the way. It's my encore career. Is I feel like I have become an editor of words, because that's how you shift out of the scarcity mindset. You edit the thoughts. And sometimes you can't go from one thought immediately to I'm not a big promoter of affirmations unless you believe them. You gotta believe them. But there's so many people out there that are going to tell you, especially in the manifestation world, oh, just say these words and then you're going to manifest it. It takes action, but you have to be believing. So I use something that my coach taught me. They're called bridge thoughts. So it's like, I'm willing to believe that I'm good with money, or I'm willing to believe that I have enough money. I'm willing to believe that I will always be safe with money.
It's not jumping straight to the thing that's not necessarily true, because clearly you have these counter thoughts and beliefs about money. So it's a bridge to that.
Yeah.
Because I'm willing to be good with money is true, or it could easily be true. More likely than I'm already good with money.
Exactly. And I was thinking for so long that I was bad with money. It's like, and guess how I showed up? I was bad with money,
sure.
right?
You got what you asked for.
Yeah. So now what we do is I help women and men. My husband and I work together as coaches too, but I help women make the shift of the thinking. Like we edit their words. We first have to figure out have awareness of what are the words they're listening to. I call it the radio station in the back of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And what are you listening to? And then let's make the shift so that we can listen to a much better channel.
Yes, I love that. I'm going to listen to this today again. This is great. Yes, because that's been a big challenge for me. I've said it before on the podcast, so it's definitely top of mind for me, especially right now with this potential investment. And I'm just going to say this because while I got you,
Yeah.
this is the best part about having a podcast. You invite amazing people like you, and you get to ask them whatever you want. So I think part of me doesn't make these investments because I don't trust myself enough to follow through.
Oh.
And with this, it's like, oh, I want to do it. Then there's the reality of I have a full-time job. I have a podcast that fills a lot of my free time. I have 2 kids, including a 7-month-old and a 4-year-old. So like, do I really have the bandwidth to do this now? And then that gets back to like all the times where I said I was going to do something and then didn't do it or whatever. So there's definitely a lack of trust there. I imagine something like that comes up in your work.
Oh, all the time, because we have to trust that we'll have our own back to show up. We'll have our own back. You're not alone on this, Adam. I want you to know that. You're not at all alone. But why let's just go there. Do you really want to do this? Do you want more exposure with the podcast?
Yes, I do. I was on Choose FI and it changed the game, right? Like probably by the time this comes out, like 1,000 people will listen to this. Whereas before it would have been 250, right? Like it literally was a step change. And that's a big podcast, but I can do that again and again. And the more I get clarity on my message and the way that I explain it and have clarity on like why I'm saying what I'm saying, it's all going to be great. It's going to be a huge thing.
What does define huge thing to you?
I mean, it's going to be more effective, right? And it's going to bring people into the podcast community and to bring opportunities my way, right? My top value, my purpose is really creating opportunity through connection. I love connecting. My number one skill is building relationships, connecting with people, building trust, and connecting people together. And that has created all the opportunities that I've had in my life. And it just keeps happening. So I think that will bring opportunity my way to more coaching, more workshops, courses, a lot of what you're doing and what I'm doing to some degree with the podcast already.
Do you believe that an investment will return exposure back to you?
Maybe. Probably. If I put in the work, which then brings me to, will I actually do the work? And do I have the bandwidth to do the work? I feel like there's a
question.
Yeah.
Do you have the bandwidth to do the work?
I don't know. I feel like maybe I don't.
That's not a valid response.
Yeah.
And here's the part about this is the timeline might be off. And that's okay too.
Yeah.
Like I will do this. I'm just choosing right now. I'm choosing my 4-year-old and my 7-month-old over the exposure. And It's a choice. This is what you talk about. It's a choice.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I had a conversation with my wife about this last night. And even like having those conversations sometimes feels a little scary. These like investing in myself conversations. And am I creating more trouble for myself in my current situation? Am I making this investment to then give myself more work to do when I already have a lot of work going on? And maybe the timing is not right because of that. And then between the large investment and the not doing it, am I just setting myself up for like beating myself up and not being in a good spot with it?
Well, and that's the thing is we use our thoughts as a weapon, right? Like
Sure.
That's
the radio station is not always playing the good oldies.
No, it's called the old shitties, right?
Yeah, the old shitties. Yeah.
I've heard another woman say that, so I can't take credit for that. But
Yeah.
yeah. So for you, I think it's just a matter of like, what do you want? And it might not be what you want now. Does that make sense? You could be, that's on the future timeline.
Yeah. It's true.
And
It's true.
the other thing to work through with that is on the scarcity, the abundance is how can you step into someone who has already invested in that course today? How would someone who's already invested in that program or course be showing up today without doing it? Do you see how they just change your mindset?
Yeah, that kind of came up as well. So
Yeah.
that's another thing. It's like, if I just took the hour and a half, I would be listening to the course and like doing it, and I just did the work, I'd probably be doing great. Like I would have a lot of those opportunities. And so it's like, it gets back to like, can I do this on my own? Yes. But yes. And this could also accelerate me.
Oh, you just did one of the things that I love pointing out, and you caught yourself, right?
Yeah. The yes
The
and
but,
versus yes
the
but.
yeah, it's so good. So good. Good catch there for yourself. But you could, and that's the thing. It's like, what if you just trusted yourself right now?
Mm.
What if you just trusted yourself right now to take some of those actions from abundance, like from someone who has already, I have a feeling, Adam, that you probably know the steps to take.
I sure do. I made the Choose FI interview happen.
Yeah.
And I've already got some things out there.
Yeah. I have
Afford
a
anything,
feeling
all the
that,
hacks, waiting to hear back from
amazing.
those.
Amazing. And I have a feeling that once you could just start taking some of those actions from someone who has already taken the course. Just changing shifting your mindset and your energy a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the language and the energy and just the stories that I'm telling about it need to be brought to awareness and have choice applied to them more clearly.
And yeah, the clarity. And then, of course, envisioning, what does that look like for you? What is the result you're thinking you're going to get from the course? And how can you make that result happen today? Literally. A lot of that is just showing up with a different mindset. Now, I work on this for myself all the time, by the way, too. So I have not mastered all of this. It's always that in the back of the mind comes up, that scarcity. But really, should you be doing this? And there's that
Right.
should word again. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Okay, cool. That's a good segment on on how to shift from a scarcity mindset. I think that's going to be super valuable for people because, as you said, I'm not the only one with the scarcity mindset, and it's a human characteristic to have a negativity bias. I think that's going to be really helpful. Let's talk about this question of what is enough. You mentioned like one of your goals or what you envisioned for yourself when you set out on this path to financial independence was being able to have enough passive income that work became optional. How do you coach people to figure out what is enough for them?
Well, we have to define the lifestyle, right? What's the lifestyle that you want to have? Because one person could be thinking enough, I'm really good with $5,000 a month. And another person could be, are you kidding? It's $25,000 a month to live the life that I want to have. So that's really defining what lifestyle do you want and how much does that lifestyle cost? And then you can apply the math. So we do work quite a bit in the mindful money method. We work on math, mindset, and soul, like soul work. Like, what do you really want? And what will feel good for you? Like, how to feel better about money. And so that's where we define what lifestyle do you want? And then we apply the math to it, knowing that there will be variables that come along and that you may make modifications into your plan and what is enough as things change. For me right now, one of the things that's changing is I'm going to become a grandmother, maybe by the time this podcast comes out. And that has got me shifting things a little because I now want to include my future grandchildren in my plan a little bit more.
Congratulations. That's very exciting to hear.
Thank you. I'm super excited. But that is defining that enough, though. I had already, if we apply the math, I feel like our journey we'll never spend all our money. We're not going to zero. It's not our plan. Our plan is to leave a legacy. And that's because we really feel like we have enough. We do enough. My husband and I travel many times during the year. We have a beautiful life. And that's the abundance part, right? Is that showing up from what we have is amazing rather than the things we don't have. Is that?
Yeah, I think about this or I describe it as the if only mindset, right? It's this, and I get caught in it all the time. If only this, then I'll be happy. If only I was at financial independence. If only I could teach mindfulness and get paid for it. And it goes on and on. And.
Good catch. Good catch. As the
Yeah.
editor of Words, I will.
Yes, you're inspiring me to do this. This is not something I always do. We can realize that if we just shift our attention just a little bit, we can realize that many of those things that we think are out there and if only this, if we shift our attention just a little bit, we can realize that we already have those, or we can have them very easily. That's been the case for me. This room that we're looking at is an example of that. My sunroom / I call it the casita. I teach mindfulness at Google. I get paid for it. All these things, right? I'm along the path on financial independence. I don't need to worry about money. I'm very fortunate. So all these things that I think are out there are actually already right here. And so the more that we can practice that and come back to that, the more we can feel that we already have enough.
Absolutely. And that's being present, right? That is mindfulness. That's being present.
Yeah.
And I think it's a wellness aspect too. I don't teach financial literacy. I teach financial wellness. Does that like how to be good with where you are financially, right? How to, whatever that point is today, doesn't mean that you don't want to have a better financial situation at some point, but being good with and feeling good with wherever you are today. And from that feel good energy, taking the actions to better your life towards your financial independence journey.
Got it. Okay. I love that. So let's keep going on the method. I don't know how far we got in, but tell me more about the method.
We do uncover and excavate the money story. And some of that money story came from, we inherited that we aren't even aware of our money story. So we actually put it down on paper, and then we all become the editors of like, what's the truth and what's fact. Then we just look at fact and we make decisions from fact. So we take a lot of the charge out of maybe the triggering thoughts that are from in the back of the mind and say, is that true? Is that what you want to think? Is that thought going to move you forward and have you serving and showing up for your greater good? So that's what we work on through the method. And then that envisioning part. We also do a lot of dreaming and then putting that down on paper so that we can start activating those future realities. So.
I'm curious how you advise people to do that, how to dream. Because I have like a envisioning. Yes, I think it's hard for some people, but also just like there's a lot of ways you can go about it. I essentially have people in my envisioning guide, which people can download at mindfulfire.org/start. It basically invites them to think 5 years in the future and setting aside all limitations, any things around what's reasonable or rational or possible, and just thinking really big with a sense of unlimited possibility and describing their life as if they're sitting at their kitchen table 5 years from now, writing out how their life is currently going. Yeah, so I'm curious, like what you advise, because I love this topic.
Mine's similar. It's like if you waved the magic wand, what would happen, or what would you be doing? And if money weren't an option, what would you be doing? Like if that wasn't it, if the other thing is, wouldn't it be amazing if, like, these are the things that we pull out. If I told my secret desire, it would be, those are the kinds of things that I work with, prompts.
Got it. Love those. And is it through journaling or conversation? Both?
Well, it depends. It depends because I teach the mindful money method in two ways. I teach it one-on-one through a coaching program. So we use the coursework, but we coach it one-on-one. That's through conversation a lot. So we were able to pull more out. Now they still do the journaling work, but they have the benefit of me digging deeper as a life coach. And then the coursework that I teach, it is a group live class. So they're doing the work and then they can ask questions during the live class, but it's a little bit of a different flavor, right? So you're with another group of women and everyone's put in the same financial bucket, but it doesn't necessarily, everyone has a unique desire, but everyone is coming to the same container to learn. And so they do the journaling work. They just don't have the one-on-one with me digging deeper into why. Tell me more about that, the life coaching
Right.
part.
Very cool. I love that. And it's interesting to hear because when I think about like why I would invest in that course and like what I want to be doing, it's very much all of those things and the corporate
Yeah,
workshops potentially as well. Cool. Are there any
it's
other?
very fun. It's very
Yeah.
fun. I will tell you that it's amazing watching people make the shift. It's
Yeah.
absolutely amazing watching women show up differently than they were previously. For example, I have a single mom that just got a $47,000 annual increase. And it had everything to do with her believing she was the woman who could show up and earn 47,000 extra dollars a year.
Yeah.
Now she's investing that in real estate, which is super fun too, because
Yeah.
a lot of the women that I work with want to be real estate investors or are currently real estate investors.
Yeah. That is awesome. I love to hear that. And yeah, it's powerful. I've seen those type of shifts in conversations that I've had and even just like free coaching calls that I've done and like 3 months later, I hear back and it's like, "Hey, I got a job. Like, I got this dream job. Like, I'm not feeling uninspired anymore. Like, I'm not depressed. Like, this is great." And it's like, wow, just like creating space and a container for people to just talk and explore and think big about their life. And it's so powerful. So it's definitely fun stuff. And I
Love
appreciate
it.
you're doing that for me right here. So I appreciate that as well. I should say that.
I will hold space for you anytime, Adam. So
Thank you. Is there any other parts of the program you wanna explore or talk about?
the Mindful Money Method is a 9-week program and it's 9 modules and it drips. And either I do it one-on-one or in this live class. And the live class is really great because it brings people together to do this work in a container that allows them to hear other people's conversations. And maybe if they're not comfortable asking their own, it's really great for introverts that want to learn the method,
Mm,
but maybe don't want to have the one-on-one or don't want to ask. When you're in a big group, you can sit in the back, right? You can turn your camera off or whatever. It's a live online course for 9 weeks. And that is a really good option for people that want to dip their toes in mindfulness and get a deliverable plan afterwards. So the plan that's created through the Mindful Money Method is called a Freedom and Relief Plan. The Freedom and Relief Plan is identifying your values and desires, 3 big goals that you want to hit. I talked earlier about the 3 goals that I had, right? I wanted to live completely debt free. I wanted to college educate my children, and I wanted to make work optional by creating enough passive income. So that is then with that plan doesn't mean that you won't modify your plan over the time. Mine was 20 years out we ended up completing it early, but that sets the GPS or the destination, and then we are able to reroute as things come up. We certainly had to. Our children decided to go to private high school, which had not been in our plan whatsoever. And their tuition to that high school was $100,000. That was like a big change for us in our journey.
I'd
Like,
say.
yeah. So that, and it's okay. And maybe it delayed us a little bit, and that's okay because they got a great education and it set them on a little bit different trajectory of their course. So it was a win. It's just a matter of how you think about it. That and
Yeah,
then so I could have said, "Oh my gosh, this has totally set us back." Instead, I just went, "This is a little change on course direction."
yeah. So it sounds like you end up with the 9 weeks with this type of plan for yourself.
Yes, you do, because we work through the values and desires. We do the incoming and outgoing of the cash flow plan or the spending plan. You create a plan that you will love and commit and follow, because that's the difference. It's like when I was just doing straight financial coaching, this is when I originally became a financial coach. I could create gorgeous budgets. I could get people debt paid off in 2 years or less, and we could get all this stuff. But they wouldn't follow it. because it wasn't connected to their desires. Does that, the values?
Absolutely. That resonates 100%. That makes so much
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
And so that's why this stuff doesn't work. It only works if you change the mindset along with taking the action. And the small shifts, like you and I were talking about earlier, those bridge thoughts, just getting yourself a little bit, like 2% more, 2% more, 2% more over to the more abundant mindset. Doesn't mean scarcity mindset is gone forever by any means. But what it does mean is that you notice it. You have the awareness to go, wait a second, stop. Is this what I want to be thinking? Is this what sets me up for the future I want?
Yeah. And I'll add another one there that I often like to use. And is this useful? Like this thought I'm telling myself, this story that I'm telling myself, is this useful? And if it's not, you can just let it go. I like the bridge thoughts because that's like the letting it go, that's a great practice. But also moving in the editing the language, as you're saying, and moving towards the more empowering mindset. I really like these bridge thoughts idea.
Oh, thank you. I love them too. So
Yeah.
I love how it's helped me. It really has helped me. I have so many friends that are like, oh my gosh, you've changed so much over the years. Because I was a yes, but person. And now I am definitely a yes, and.
So, Liz, at the beginning, you mentioned that everyone's talking about this idea of generational wealth, but you have a different take on it. So, would love to hear your thoughts on generational wealth and what you focus on instead.
I believe in legacy wealth over generational wealth. And I have the thought that generational wealth is limiting. Generational wealth to me is one tree, and legacy wealth is a full orchard. So now what could happen is that one tree could be bigger than the orchard, meaning like size than the trees in the orchard. But I love that visualization of legacy wealth. Now, of course, my father was a farmer and we had orchards, but I love that idea that legacy is planting many trees rather than just one tree. And those trees can be not just so much money either. It could be mentorship or time, talent, treasures in your community or in causes that you're passionate about or the environment. And so that you're kind of spreading your wealth out, not only your financial wealth, but the wealth of your knowledge and character and other aspects of wealth.
Yeah, I love this idea. It's not something that I've thought much about, but I really appreciate the metaphor that you're using of one tree. Generational wealth is one tree, which provides for your heirs, essentially, your family. But this orchard, it provides for the whole community, right? Even maybe the whole state or the whole country or the whole world. And planting those various trees really provides so much more. It's kind of like a 1 + 1 = 3 type of thing. And we've been talking about your method and really what you're doing with that in this live class and the one-on-one coaching is you're planting these trees.
Absolutely.
And then
Oh,
those
I love
people
that
go
you just
off
said
and
that. Oh, you
yeah.
just gave me chills because it's totally, this is all about legacy for me.
Yeah.
Every bit of it.
Yeah. I like that also because I often talk about planting seeds that every thought, like with regards to envisioning and mindfulness, like every thought that we think is like a seed that we're planting or watering. And because of neuroplasticity, the fact that our brain is constantly rewiring based on our experience and the fact that our brains are predictive, right? Like we talked about at the beginning, the manifestation and like the affirmations that you don't believe, like the woo woo stuff that can be talked about. I like to ground it in the science. And I use this analogy or this metaphor of seeds to really help people realize that when you're telling yourself that story of I'm bad with money, you're programming that in your brain and making yourself ready to see how you're bad at money and opportunities to be bad at money. But if you instead choose to shift that, like with the bridge thoughts that you taught me about here today, you can start to plant more useful and more positive seeds. And then now I like taking that to a step further with legacy wealth. You're growing that orchard right? And you're tending to that orchard, and the people that you impact, they're all part of that orchard. So I think that is, it's like, I feel like there's a lot of things in this conversation that have like helped me build on things that I already knew and believe.
Well, and that's my work as a coach, expansion.
Hmm.
It's exactly what we work on. Openness and expansion, thinking bigger, hitting those upper limit thoughts and going beyond them. That is exactly what I do with my clients.
I love it. I love it. All right, let's shift gears into what I call the mindful fire final four. Are you ready, Liz?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. So the first question is, I talk a lot about envisioning. We've talked a lot about envisioning. I'd love to hear an example of how you've envisioned something in your life. I know we've talked about a lot of big examples, but maybe share a recent small example.
Well, I had something just this week that I was doing an envisioning, a manifestation exercise that I was going to envision or call in my next corporate client by the end of the month. And I was in the middle of this envisioning process and this activation. And I was sitting at my desk. I literally opened up my eyes from the meditation, and a new, totally random request came in from LinkedIn for an organization that wanted me to come do a financial wellness workshop for their employees. So I know that this worked. I mean, it
happens fast.
freaky. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's
I'm getting
amazing.
better at it. Let's just say that, because I used to envision things 20 years out. Now I'm envisioning them within 20 seconds.
Yeah, that's great. So so tell me, like, what was that meditation like? Like, what's the magic meditation that made that happen?
Well, it really was just getting clear with it and making sure that I had the space and the capacity to bring it on. Because those are the thoughts sometimes that are like, you and I talked about this earlier. Do I really have the time to do that? But my daughter's wedding's coming up. Maybe I shouldn't take on another client right now. You know, those thoughts in the back of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And in that meditation, it was like, no, I'm making the space for it.
Right. Okay. I like that. So you're working through all the things of like, oh, no, I'll figure that out. It'll be fine. That one's taken care of. That one's taken care of. That one's taken care of.
Yeah.
I like that.
All those doubts that come up, like addressing them. Yep.
Amazing. Amazing. So the second question is, what piece of advice would you give to someone early on their path to financial independence?
There's a couple different things. It's like, what's the one thing, right?
The one
thing, right? I'm giving a presentation to a bunch of nannies on financial wellness. So they're starting their journey pretty early. And my one thing for them is definitely to track the incoming and outgoing of their finances. So that would be my number one thing if someone was starting their journey right now, is to track if I had to pick two, like if I got to pick two, right?
You just got a bonus one, Liz.
Yeah. Okay. If I get to pick two, it would be to really identify those values, your true values, as to what do you want. For mine, I've mentioned before, legacy is really important to me. And so that's one of my top 5 values. So I then make decisions into legacy all the time, or from someone who is living their legacy.
Nice. Nice. I love that. All right, Liz. The third question is, what piece of advice would you give to someone getting started with meditation and or mindfulness?
I just start. My advice is, get it wrong, do it wrong. There's no right or wrong. That's the thing. Mm-hmm. So give yourself permission to be really bad at it. When I started meditating, it was like maybe a minute or two. Now I like to sit for 15 minutes. I lead a group of meditators, and I call it meditation for new meditators, or non-meditators is what I lead, a senior citizen group. And it's part of what I love to do in my Encore career now, is I get to choose how I spend my time. And one of the things that I do is teach this meditation class. And sometimes we just show up and watch a candle flame for 30 minutes. And we break it up. There's other things that we do during that, but we always sit for 30 minutes. And it's just, everyone tells me when they come out of that class, they feel so much less reactive. They get to put that pause in their life. So they're not shooting off the handle. So they take that pause and then make the decision of, how am I going to show up? How am I going to show up throughout the day?
Yep. Creating space between the stimulus and the response. Love that.
Absolutely. So my answer is
Sounds good.
just start.
All right, Liz. The last question is, how can people connect with you online, learn more about your mindful money method live class, as well as the coaching that you do? How can people find you online and connect with you?
The mindfulmoneymethod.com is where they can find the course and learn more about my coaching. On Instagram, I love to show up there. And I show up there as from our business name, which is Mindful Money Coaches. And Mindful Money Coaches, we've been doing this for quite some time now. It's been really fun that I've got to see so many people bloom from their financial wellness journey and financial freedom, right? Financial independence. I think they're all interchangeable. It's like you first have to have the wellness before you get to the independence, and then comes the freedom. So I guess progression is the word I would say rather than interchangeable, as I edit my own words there.
Yeah. Very cool. We'll link up all of that in the show notes, and people can certainly check out your course, your coaching, and your workshop. All of it will be linked up in the show notes. Thank you so much, Liz, for being here. This is by far one of my most favorite episodes. So I've learned a lot, and it's wonderful to meet you and be connected with you. And I thank you for sharing all of your wisdom with me and the audience.
Thank you, Adam, for having me. I really appreciate it. And best of luck on your journey, too. Hope we stay in contact.
Yes, definitely. Thanks for joining me on today's episode of the Mindful Fire podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, I invite you to hit subscribe wherever you're listening to this. This just lets the platforms know you're getting value from the episodes and you want to be here when I release additional content. If you're ready to start your Mindful Fire journey, go to mindfulfire.org/start and download my free envisioning guide. In just 10 minutes, this guide will help you craft a clear and inspiring vision for your life. Again, you can download it for free at mindfulfire.org/start. Thanks again, and I'll catch you next time on the Mindful Fire podcast.